everyone. Welcome to today's Hult Virtual Skills Lab. Just to check if everything is okay, can everyone please write in the chat box where you are listening to us from? We have Mumbai, India, Brazil, Turkey, UAE, Philippines, Nigeria, India, Italy, UAE, Luxembourg, Manila, Germany, Bulgaria, hello, Philippines, Brazil. Okay, wow. So a lot of countries are represented today. So to start, this forum is an online global meeting space offering you the opportunity to skill up and get ahead. To those who are joining a Halt event for the first time, I just want to give you a little bit of background about us. Halt has designed a school that looks to the future by developing your leadership skills, challenging you with a future-oriented curriculum, and building a global perspective that only first-hand experience can bring. We currently offer an undergraduate program, 5 specialist one-year master's program, a one-year global MBA, and a uniquely flexible part-time executive MBA. More information on our programs and the upcoming scholarship deadline can be found at halt.edu. And before we begin, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping. A recording of the webinar will also be sent out to everyone in the email in the next few days. Professor Hamwee's masterclass will last approximately 45 minutes, including questions. So if you wish to ask a question, please write it in the Q&A box. We will then put these questions to Professor Hamwee at the end. And if you would like to talk more and learn about our programs, we will be hosting info sessions after today's webinar. Links will be shared later in the chat box. And finally, joining us today is Hult Professor Robert Hamwee, who will take us through the art of delivery, effective presentations online and in person. Professor Hamwee has been involved in international training and development in a career spanning almost 3 decades, having started in language and information technology, training in South America, where he lived for 23 years. He is now CEO of Oval Perform, a multidisciplinary learning and talent development consulting firm that brings together a diverse and experienced team to solve complex global learning solutions. Robert holds a Master of Arts degree, a diploma in management with focus on adult learning, and a teaching certificate from the Royal Society of Arts. He is also a member of the Board of Examiners of the University of Cambridge. So without further ado, I now give the floor to Professor Robert Hamwee.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. Good morning, bonjour, guten tag, merhaba, konbanwa, bon dia, wherever it is you are today, and welcome to today's seminar. So first of all, let me share my screen so we can start delving into this straight away. I assume you can share, you can see this. Let's see if I see it on my other computer, then you should be able to see it. And you do indeed. Thank you very much. So welcome everybody today. I have a few things to share with you today, but the first thing I want to do is you're here to listen to something about the art of presenting. And obviously I am using PowerPoint, as you can see. And one of the things that I don't like to do is I don't like to disappoint anyone. Okay, and given that we are using PowerPoint, I want you to think about a couple of things. The first thing is that people have ranked the fear of public speaking #1 over the fear of dying. Okay, so you know, this is about, well, for a number of reasons, probably just the fact of just the mere thought of standing in front of, you know, sort of an audience will probably send most people into either overdrive or into complete and utter panic. But there are lots of ways to, you know, manage that. We are not going to be able to delve in detail into all these in the, you know, sort of minutes that we have. But I want to give you a few tips. As I said, I don't want to disappoint anyone. And given that I'm using PowerPoint today, you know, we're going to look at 3 themes and 9 tips. But as I said, we're using PowerPoint, And when we use PowerPoint, what do people expect? People expect graphs and bullet points. Graphs and bullet points. Now, as I say, I don't want to disappoint you. So here is a graph, and here is a list of bullet points. Okay, I don't want to disappoint anyone. As I said, there you are. So we've got everything, sort of already up there. So now we can move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about PowerPoints and graphs and sort of that kind of stuff as we go along. So let us move on to our first element. Why present? And when I say why present here is not two different kinds of presentation. One is a presentation that we're going to be talking about today, which is about influencing people, about getting people to think differently, about connecting with people, about sharing your thoughts, your emotions, about, planting seeds into people's brains so that they can leave your presentations with something to think about. That, number one. It is not the kind of presentation that we talk of presentation that you would give, for example, your sales manager on a weekly basis, where you report on figures. That is not a presentation. If you want to, that's more of an oral report, and you do not appeal so much, although probably a bit, to people's emotions. It is a lot more factual. It's facts and figures. We're going to be talking about a slightly different, sort of type of, of presentation today. So why present? Well, because you as a presenter is really to make your learners think. Okay, Chris Anderson, a good quote from Chris Anderson here, the sort of the organizer of TED. Okay, your number one task as a speaker is to transfer into your listeners' minds an extraordinary gift, a strange and beautiful object that we call an idea, or a story, or a thought, or something for them to take away, and that is not very easy to do. So I want to divide this into three sections, three takeaways. So we're going to look at things that we see or that other people see, things that other people hear, and other things that people interpret, because what you see and what you hear is very, very different from what you may actually interpret. And our role as presenters is to make people interpret things, to share things that people can actually take away with them and say, what does this mean to me? And what will means to one person may not necessarily mean the same to another person. So here's a question for you, and I want the answers on, sort of in the chat box. What is the most important visual element in a presentation? And I'm going to give you 30 seconds to put something in the chat box. I'm going to open it. Graph charts, your theme, the presenters, a person, the speaker, pictures, oh gosh, hypothesis. Oh, that's a new one. Font, theme, the font elements, surprise, font, branding, body language. Very good. Speaker himself. Gar, I don't know what that is. Okay. Content, in essence, your key takeaway, pictures, alignment, color. Key messages, font, speaker, images, design, font, relevance of the images, voice, use of words. My gosh, a lot of stuff, straight point, visual, you. Thank you very much. Intonation, says Regina. Shaika says your voice. Raciel says graphic. Harsh says essence. Very good. Sparsh says hypothesis. I don't know what they mean by a hypothesis. The confidence of the speaker. Gustavo says the main idea. Edson, representations. Edson, I'm guessing you are from Brazil. Raciel, content, bullet points. Design, okay. Yes, very good. Good, excellent. So we have quite a few things. Now, it's interesting to see that quite a few people have actually said slides. And that is the wrong answer, actually. The most important thing is what some other people said, and it is indeed body language. Very good. Body language is the most important visual, because body language is about you. You can actually carry out a presentation without slides, but you can't carry out a presentation without body language. That is absolutely and totally impossible to do. So body language really is the most important aspect of sort of a presentation, because without it, again, nothing happens. It's all about you. Now, there have been studies conducted in the United States, particularly in the University of Los Angeles, UCLA, where by a certain professor called Albert Merabian, who actually said that when we talk, when we deliver a presentation, 55% of the content is represented by a body language. In other words, 55% is visual. This is what I call the three V's. 38% is vocal, and only 7% is verbal. I'm going to come back to the last two later on. But let us now, one of the things that I do want to give you a little bit of a caveat here, because Merabian mentions it in his own website, is the fact that this applies when we're talking about emotions, okay? If we're simply talking about facts, you know, body language really does not come much into force, okay? If your girlfriend, wife, spouse, brother, sister comes and say, can you go to the supermarket and get me a dozen bananas and a packet of cornflakes? Well, body language doesn't come into play, does it? I mean, what are they going to do? Act to your shopping list. So let us make sure that we understand that this is really when we are talking about mainly about emotions. So body language, extremely important, if not the most important thing. So here's another question for you. Today, I am delivering, sitting in the comfort of my own study at home in the United Kingdom. And as I said, and a confession that I do have to make, is for me one of the most difficult things on the planet is to deliver training sitting down. Because when I teach in class, I never ever sit down. I can go for 8-9 hours without sitting down, and I just move around the stage like you know, sort of like a crazy animal. Because I think, you know, sort of that is all part of the body language. So I'm exercising the pinnacle of human self-control by having to sit here and not having you in front of me, although I know I do. So let me ask you another question. When, and that you can type this in the chat box, body language is not important during virtual presentations. After all, nobody can see me. Do you agree or do you disagree? Let's go back to the chat box. False. Kirsten says no. Johannes says, I missed what Johannes says. It's all going very quickly. Monina says disagree. Angelo says no. Stephanie says, I've gone very quickly, disagree. Thank you very, very much. Oh my God, I do not agree. Some people do agree. Interesting. Disagree, disagree, disagree. Agree. Yes, in that case, a vocal is more important. Ah, Ricardo, interesting point there. Monique, disagree. It says a lot about one's confidence and knowledge on the subject. Yes, body language doesn't only convince the audience, but it also convinces yourself. It makes you believe what you say. Yeah, to a degree. Yeah. No, because your body language can affect your voice and tone. Kilaj, thank you. Remember that. We're going to go back to that. Thank you. Voice modulation is important. Yes, it is. We're going to talk about that a little bit in a little while. So yes, you are absolutely right. Most of you said that it does affect your attitude. Says Ayushmita, thank you very much. It affects your attitude. If I am slouching, okay, and if I'm talking like this, or I'm talking like this, body language does affect what I say, doesn't it? Okay, and that's why people in call centers normally sit up straight. Okay, um, normally they tend to breathe properly. Remember, your thorax is a little bit like a guitar or like a musical instrument, like the sounding body of a guitar. And if you press against it, okay, because you're not sitting up straight, it affects your voice, and it can come across as, you know, probably not genuine and probably not very comfortable. Yes, it also gives you personality impact. Sit straight, look at the camera. That is the best way or the only way to make eye contact when you're presenting virtually, and that is to look straight at the camera. Okay, so body language, very important, even if you're presenting virtually. Okay, the tone of voice has to compensate for the fact that you cannot see probably from here downwards, but still very, very important. Good. So we looked a little bit at body language, but we also have very, very important visuals as part of the presentation. And those are, of course, your slides. And slides can be very, very powerful. And if your slides doesn't help the audience, then please don't put it as part of your presentation. You know, Slides are for the benefit of the audience. They're not an aide-memoire for you. They're not a script for you because you don't know your stuff well. Okay, it is very, very important. Now, let's go a little bit back to bullet points, because when we take PowerPoint, the PowerPoint package straight out of the box, the vanilla straight out of the box, or you install it, there is this penchant for using, or this inclination for using, a lot of these wonderful templates that they have, and put a lot of bullet points. And unfortunately, and for many years, I was a terrible disliker of PowerPoint. The old phrase, death by PowerPoint, I'm sure that you've heard it before. And then I realized, is it really the fault of PowerPoint, or is it the fault of the people who actually use it and the way that we used it? So I did a little bit of searching, or soul searching, and I said, no, why? I mean, we can use PowerPoint very, very differently. So one of the things that I don't do, and this is entirely up to you guys, I'm not saying that people should do, is I don't use templates. You will realize most of my slides will have one image and a little bit of text, but I don't particularly use templates because I don't like them, particularly the ones that come with PowerPoint. I'm not talking about corporate templates that have been carefully designed with careful fonts. That's a different thing. But do not fall into the trap of using the standard PowerPoint templates full of bullets, which is the way that, if you want, Bill Gates used to deliver his presentations initially, which were quite mind-numbing, as a matter of fact. Okay, so use of bullet points. Nobody can actually deliver a whole presentation full of bullet points. There have been studies that have come to the conclusion that bullet points are probably the worst form of presenting information. They're boring, they're predictable, they are repetitive. I don't particularly like them. It doesn't mean you can't use them. There's no law on this planet that says that you can't use bullet points. Use them, but use them sparingly, okay? Make sure that you use things that are probably an alternative. Do we need text? Ask yourself, can I use a powerful image instead of text? Somebody rightly said, a picture paints 1,000 words. Yes, it also takes up 1,000 times more memory on your computer, but they can be 1,000 times more effective. So, slides riddled with, sort of with text are not necessarily, sort of very, very good idea. So what kind of images? Well, one thing that is very important is to draw your audience's attention to your slides, okay, and to your figures, or to your whatever it is you're presenting. And one very appropriate way of doing it, or very effective way of doing it, is using the power of faces. Okay, I'm not talking about my face. It's not particularly pretty, but there are good faces around there that you can actually use, particularly the viewer's eyes. Viewers' eyes tend to draw attention to text. The viewers' eyes are a window into people's souls, and they really do play a very, very, very big part in that. Let me give you an example. Here is a picture of former Prime Minister Winston Churchill with one of his famous sayings. Mr. Churchill, as I always say, went around saying what he was thinking before he had time to think what he was saying. But it's interesting in this case where I placed the text. But if I show you this slide, for example, if this goes ahead, yeah, I place the slides more in the direction in which he's looking, which makes it a lot more effective. It just draws my attention to the way that he's looking. The other one makes you work a little bit more, and work not in the good way. Let's have a look at this example. This is one I just put together. Look at this one, cute little girl, and look at the cute little girl now. Very, very different, a lot more powerful, and it directs people's eyes. Now, you may think that this is just my opinion. To a degree it is, but there is some science behind this. And I'm going to tell you what the science is. In Australia, a few years ago, they carried out an experiment where they gave people glasses, okay? But these glasses were fitted with a laser eye tracker, okay? And they showed people, is the slide not moving? Somebody says the slide is not moving. Ah, yes, thank you. And they put people in the with these eye trackers, and they gave them an advertisement, as I will show you now, okay, of babies' nappies, or for our American friends, diapers, okay? And you can see here the baby, for those of you who don't know, these are diapers, okay? Baby, as I always define them, a little person with a loud noise at this end and a complete lack of responsibility at this end. So as you can see, the heat map here shows that most people's gaze were directed at the baby's eyes, at the baby's face, and not at the product itself, which is what they wanted to sell. When they changed the position of the baby, haha, lo and behold, what happened? Look at the heat map. A lot more attention was directed in the direction of the of the text, and also would lead ostensibly to more sales. Now, the use of graphics is paramount. I have witnessed presentations, corporate clients and others, where the use of graphics was appalling, to say the least. For example, people get a lovely graphic and they stretch it in order to make it fit the whole screen. It may look good in a phone, it may look good in your small computer, but when you stretch it, particularly in an overhead projector, it may end up looking like a dog's dinner. So don't simply stretch a small, low-resolution photo to make it fit your layout. It doesn't work like that. Make sure that you use high-quality graphics to put your ideas across nicely or visually appealing. And please avoid using clip art. For those of you who don't know what clip art is, these standard little cartoonish sort of drawings, particularly that you can pick up on the web, or they come with PowerPoint. Those were good in the 1990s. They're no longer effective, and people look for a lot more powerful, sort of presentations now, simply because we can do it 25 hours a day. Nowadays, we have no excuse. And by the way, most of you have one of these, okay? Either Samsung or whatever it is. These are not mobile phones. These are cameras with a phone attached to them, and you can get very good pictures. I took very good pictures with my little iPhone here, and I use them. And if I find something that I said, oh, this looks cool, I could use for a presentation, take a photograph, okay? Make sure that you, before you take photograph of people, that you ask them, and that you do the right thing. So there's no excuse for not having good slides. Now, let me show you another typical example of the things that I see, and this comes from even people. Okay, I worked for Accenture for 12 years, and I have seen a lot of presentations from clients, from friends, and some of them were excellent. Otherwise, some others were, simply quite bad. And this is a typical example. I would like to introduce my team. Okay, and here you have a picture of the team, and we, as the slide designer, have not got the right to decide when people should go on a diet or when people should put on weight. The poor woman in the first picture, top left, looks as though she's just been subjected to the powers of a hydraulic press. The guy in the second picture looks like he's just come out of a boot camp where they starved him to death for the period of 3 weeks. And you can see probably the third chap is suffering from tremendous headache from being squashed from the top. This is bad. You need to learn how to work these things properly, and really, this is the way that it should be done. You crop your images to make sure that they fit properly. Now they look quite handsome now, okay? And again, don't ever constrain the proportions of graphics, okay? That is one of the worst possible signs of bad design. And I see it all the time. Oh, it's got to fit in a 4x4 square. Yes, I agree, but please don't make people look ugly. Some of us are ugly already. Don't make us look uglier than we already are, okay? So use of slides, very important. There is a lovely saying that says that some people use slides like a drunk person uses a lamppost, more for support than illumination. Please don't be that person, all right? Learn your slides, and please, whatever you do, don't read off your slides. Okay? Try to depend on them, because it may happen, and it has happened to me a number of times, that you're in the middle of a presentation and your computer decides to go into meltdown, all right? In which case, the show must go on, all right? And you've got to know your stuff inside out. You've got to be able to speak freely, speak with confidence, loud and clear. Don't speak too fast. Maintain eye contact with the audience, okay? Like I am trying to maintain eye contact with you. I'm not reading, I have no notes. I mean, if you need to have notes, and these are not notes for this presentation, as a matter of fact, have them there and just have a few key words, okay? But we're gonna come back to that in a minute. So again, don't let the slides drive your presentation. Your slides are there to support your presentation. That's why when people ask me, "Oh, sorry, Robert, I couldn't come to your presentation. Can you send me your slides?" I would say no. And they said, "Oh, why?" I said, "Because my slides without me don't mean anything." Okay, so if they do, if people can actually have your slides in lieu of your presentation, then why bother come to the presentation in the first place? I'll tell you a little story. Many years ago, I was approached, I was still working for Accenture, and a chap from a company, I'm not going to name it because it's not nice, invited me to a presentation at the Institute of Directors here in London. I'd known him for many years. So he was launching, to be honest with you, it was so unmemorable that I don't even remember what it was. Yes, he was launching a new process for training needs analysis or something like that. So he invited me. I went to the presentation. I didn't get there late, but I got there, I think, 2 minutes before the presentation began. I remember it was pouring with rain. And the hall was very big, and I was at the back. And that to the extent that when he started the presentation, he started saying, "Hello, my name is David, and today I'm going to talk about, which sucks the life out of anyone because that's not the way to start a presentation in any event." But then he put up these seizure-inducing slides, and he said, "Well, yes, I'm going to share with you some of my ideas." And I was sitting at the very back because I'd arrived sort of at the last minute. He said, "Those of you at the back, I'm sorry, you may not be able to see my slides." So I got up and left. And of course, he called me at the office the following day. He said, "I noticed you left in the middle of a presentation." I said, "Was everything okay?" I said, "Look, mate," I said, "if you're going to invite me to a presentation and you're going to say you might not be able to see my slides, why bother come at the beginning?" It's like saying, "Look, I'm going to invite you to go to the cinema, but I'm going to sit you behind a column, so you may not be able to see the film. What's the point?" So we had a good conversation after that. We're quite good friends, so I was quite open with him. So know your stuff. So a few takeaways from seeing, and there you go. Remember the importance of body language. Number 2, if it wants to appear, yes, spend time designing your slides to avoid common errors. Remember, slides should support your narrative. And sometimes I can spend 15, 20 minutes on one slide, okay, saying, I don't like this. It's not practice that makes perfect. It's good practice that makes perfect. This was told to me by a piano teacher many, many years ago. Good practice makes perfect. It's not just practice. If you practice the wrong thing, you're never going to get anything. Let's have a look at part number 2. Okay, which is what you hear. Now, different people will hear different things, and different people will communicate differently, and this will also vary across cultures. For example, Anglo-Saxon people tend to be a little bit more controlled in the way that we talk. Okay, here we go. "Hello, today I went to the cinema. I went to see a lovely film." Okay. Latin people tend to be a lot more rambunctious. They tend to use a lot more in the spectrum or in the. Okay. If you ever listen to, sort of Italian, a Spanish, a Brazilian, a Greek, speak, you will realize how they speak very different. They have a lot more breadth in the frequencies that they use. Orientals tend to be a lot more reserved. It's not a question of being good or bad. They're simply different. That's the way that languages, have evolved. Now, it is important when you talk and when you deliver something to be able to use that variety of pitches, and it takes practice. It doesn't happen overnight. Okay, so here comes the question: to read or not to read? Now, it's great because I say I'm delivering here in the comfort of my own home. I can have my notes in front of me and I can read them, and it will sound great. unfortunately, nothing sounds worse than when you read a presentation, because you feel that you, or the audience, they're being read to rather than spoken to. The pace is very fast. If you stumble, when you read and you stumble, you normally tend to go back. So it sounds completely unnatural. Okay. It sounds contrived. You may think that, oh, I'm going to get everything there. No, it is much better to have loose words on a piece of paper and use those as a, as a map. And you fill in the sort of the words in the middle. Okay. There is nothing wrong in using notes, but you've got to be able to balance the use of notes with making eye contact. Otherwise, you're going to be missing more than one trick. And the other very important thing, guys, is the power of silence. And a lot of people there probably thought that my screen had frozen. No. The power of silence can be extremely important. It is extremely important because it can actually cement the point that you have just made. It can add drama, it can add aplomb, it can add seriousness. It can be very powerful. Let me give you an example. When you negotiate with someone, if you're in the middle of a negotiation and you're getting to the end of the negotiation and you're about to state your final price, okay? Look, we've been discussing this for half an hour. My final offer is I'm going to give you 10% discount, 90 days payment terms, and I'm going to give you 2 weeks warranty. If then you are the next person to talk, you've lost the sale. You have to hand that back to the other person. Okay. Use the power of silence. Many years ago, I worked with a guy in Accenture, a guy from New Zealand, a guy of phenomenal intelligence. But he used silence in such a way that it intimidated the hell out of me. I'm not a guy, but I hate going into his office. And I remember my boss used to say, "Come on, we've got to go and talk to Craig." And I said, "No, I don't want to go." I said, "Why not?" Because he asked me a question, then he pauses, and he made me doubt whether I had given him the right answer. It was quite uncomfortable. And he said, "Talk to him about it." I said, "I can't. The guy's very senior in the company. I can't do that." I said, "Go and talk to him." So I went. I said, "Look, I really have to talk to you about something." They said, "Yes, what is it?" I said, "Sometimes I say something and then you just go into this silence and I feel very intimidated." And he looks at me and he says, "Aha." And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly what I mean." Okay. In the end, we became, sort of relatively friendly, but a very, very good example of the power of silence. Okay. Pause. Let things sink in. So a few takeaways from the here. First of all, use a variety of vocal patterns. Monotonous voices do not move people. Okay. You don't want people who talk like this. Okay, they can be very boring. Learn how to use notes effectively. If you must, eye contact comes before reading. And remember the power of silence. Pauses can be or can cause dramatic effects. And this goes back to what I said before when we looked at the 38% being vocal and 7% being verbal. Vocal is about the way that you say things, and verbal is the words that you use. And the way that you say things is a lot more important than the words that you use. I'm probably going to be very accused now of being sexist or whatever it is, but I'm sure I have been in the position sometimes when I ask my wife, I said, "What's wrong, darling?" And she says, "Nothing." There you go. Very good example. Yes, the words verbal, 7%, yes, but 38% of the nothing doesn't mean that nothing's wrong. Okay. So when you ask your other half, sort of, "What's wrong, darling?" You say, "Nothing." Look, my advice is don't breathe, don't say anything, don't move. Okay. Just don't do anything. Just stay there. Okay. So there you go. Very good example of the power of sort of vocals rather than verbals. I also learned many years ago from my wife that do whatever you want means anything except that. Okay, so Let's just move on to interpret, because okay, and the people who can actually help us interpret things is people who have passion, and those are the best presenters. Okay, you cannot inspire others unless you're inspired yourself. So find out what your passion is. Find out what really makes you tick. Okay, because with that way you can inspire people a lot easier. um, Maya Angelou, the writer who died a couple of years ago, or a few years ago unfortunately, said once, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you will forget how you made them feel. I'll give you a very good example. I'm sure that most of you, I certainly do, and I went to school many years ago. um, we all remember our best teacher and we all remember our worst teacher because of the way they made us feel. Your best teacher is probably the people, that person who encouraged the best out of you, for you to do your best, who gave you confidence, and who made you feel good about yourself. And that is what I always say is my personal motto in life: to make people feel good about themselves. What you can get out of people, uh, and how much you can help them by making them feel good about themselves at work, give them confidence, make them feel that they count for something in this world, make them feel that you, like anybody else, have shortcomings. Nobody is perfect. And don't underestimate the power of the mind. It is very important to understand that stories and passion are emotional. Data is an emotional, presenting facts and figures, and that's totally an emotional. Okay, so and this is obviously a whole sort of 3-month course for me, but think of how you can bring the story behind sort of what you're saying, to get to people's hearts and to get to people's minds as well. Make your audience think. Don't make them think too hard, but give them that aha moment. Okay, so what's going on here? So here's a question for you: what's going on? What's wrong with this graphic? Come on, in the chat box. What's wrong with this graphic? Oh, we have nobody typing. Yes, thank you very much. Klaus is the first one. No, Klaus is, yes, a few people have learned, but Klaus is the first one. So Klaus wins a trip to Jupiter. Unfortunately, Klaus, because of coronavirus, all trips to Jupiter have been cancelled. So you're simply going to have to get away with a round of applause from me. Yes, thank you very much indeed. The 10 of diamonds should not be black. The 10 of diamonds indeed should be red. So very good indeed. Good, 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 good. And so think is important, sort of, it adds that little, sort of idea. It says, and it makes people, or helps people, see things, sort of differently. For example, I can tell you here, I see rectangles. But I can also tell you that I see circles. Can anybody see the circles? Can anybody see the circles? No, says Harsh. No? Ah, we've got a few people who can. Very good. Regine says yes, you can. Kasia says yes. Zainab says yes, I can. Yes, absolutely correct. So you can. So you can always make people see things differently. There are the circles for those of you. Interesting. Once you've seen the circle, you cannot unsee them. There you go. If I take the orange frames out, you can see the circles, but without them, you can't see it. Now, we live in a world of doom and gloom, and one of the important things to bring to your presentation is a little bit of positivity and optimism, and leave people, sort of going home at least a little bit fulfilled. So try to end your speeches on a high note wherever possible. And even if your theme, your topic is deep, even if we're talking about the gradual destruction of our planet through, horrendous emissions of CO2, there's a lot of work being carried out, okay? Yes, cars produce a lot of CO2, but did you know that in countries like India, they're planning to ban internal combustion engines by the year 2040? Did you know that Norway will cease to manufacture petrol and diesel-driven engines by 2030? That's 9.5 years from now. So there is really, really always some good news. Make people, again, go home feeling with a little bit of positivity. And last, I'm going to give you one final tip, which is don't take yourself too seriously. I am very, very serious about my job, very serious, but I'm certainly not serious about myself. I still believe that life is all distance between people. And I have managed to use humor appropriately, obviously, sort of in a number of situations to diffuse something that would have gone nowhere except with a little bit of humor. People are there in your presentation because they want to listen to what you want to say. They're not there for you to fail. They don't want you to fail. They want you to succeed. Okay. And if things go wrong, they go wrong because you know what? It's human nature. That is the way the world wags. Okay. I've been in a lot of presentations where things certainly didn't go my way. I've given horrendous presentations. I was young and inexperienced once. Trust me, I wasn't born with gray hair. Well, I don't have gray hair. I have brown hair, but I dye it gray so that you guys respect me. But I don't know whether it works. But yes, don't take yourself too seriously. So just a few tips before we move on. There's a huge difference between what you say and what people hear and feel. Two very different things, completely different things. Bring emotions and passions to your deliveries. These can act like a guided missile to people's heart. You're talking to people's hearts, not just people's minds. And last but not least, use humor where appropriate. Don't take yourself too seriously. Somebody rightly said, don't take life too seriously. You're never going to get out of it alive. And I think that's very true. So I hand over to you for any questions. Better go to my question box. Hold on, where's my question box? I can't find it here. Q&A, there we go. Okay, we have one question here. How can you make presentation visually impressive when it's technical in its content? Yes, that is a very good question. I'm asked that all the time. Try to think how you apply. Obviously, if you're going to demonstrate the use of a new software package, it's not emotional. It's just procedural training. And there are things such as procedural training or process training, and you can't make that very sexy. There comes to a point where you're not sharing your emotions, your personal stories in the way that I use Microsoft Word. And even if I tried, probably fail miserably. So there is still the kind of presentation where you are delivering actual, not learning, but use, process, not even learning, it's actually process. So if it's purely technical, I mean, you can you can still use good visuals, okay? Get a good screen grab, get a good picture of a screen, and then fill in the stuff yourself in order to make it a lot more realistic. How do you stay confident throughout? Practice, my good friend. I don't have, Shagan, I haven't got any other answer to that. How do you handle stage fright? Again, practice. One of the stories that I told in in the previous session is I always like to share something about my life. My first degree, my first training was as a musician. I trained as a pianist when I was sort of a kid, and then I did orchestra conducting and composition. And I still conduct orchestras and all that. And I remember when I was a kid, when I was young, I was 21 years old. I'll never forget that. And I conducted my first orchestra. I took the baton, the stick that conductors use, and I was shaking like a leaf. So my stage fright was just absolutely horrendous. And I remember looking at it, when I say don't use notes, I was literally using notes in the strict sense of the word, and I wouldn't take my eyes off my score until one of my friends, after the third or fourth concert, he stuck pages together. So when I turned the page, I was in the completely wrong place, and I panicked. But the show must go on, and I learned such a good lesson, because that's the day that I learned how not to depend on notes. Confidence also comes from knowing your stuff. In those days, I didn't know my stuff probably. Practice, 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 practice your presentation. When I am going to deliver a presentation, I practice it at home. I speak aloud, yes, to myself. Sometimes I invite my dogs in and my cat, but they don't seem to be very interested. But practice, just practice until you make it. You will not be able to put a few slides together, stand in front of people and wing it. Trust me, it's not going to work at all. How do you say? Any tips on presenting data without overwhelming the audience? Yes, there are effective ways of presenting data. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to go into that. Can you make interaction with public asking questions? Absolutely. I make the public work. Hey, why should I do all the work? That's what they're there for. I made you do work today. I asked you questions. Okay. Well, I can see the chat there. There's a Deloitte person here. Okay, very good. um, we won't tell. How you handle negative thinkers in the audience. Yes, you're always going to get that sour-faced person who hasn't got much of a life, who will try to run your presentation down. At the end of the day, look, you have to say we have to agree to disagree. It is not really about, about trying to persuade people to adopt your point of view. This is your point of view, and it'll be based on something. This is how I feel. Remember one thing, and this you can take away with you. People will be able to argue about your facts. People can argue on your facts. But there's one thing people can never argue about, and that is your story and your feelings, particularly feelings. You cannot tell you can tell people, well, I don't think 2 + 2 is 5. Oh, well, I think it is. Well, jolly good luck to you, but I disagree. But when somebody say, I feel very anxious about this, or I feel very sad, you can't tell people, well, no, you're not feeling very sad, or you're not feeling very anxious. That is not a matter of opinion. So when, what do you call it, emotions come in, uh, you know, you can have, sort of negative thinkers in the audience, but at the end of the day, it's how you feel about it. How to be more confident, practice, practice, practice. How to deal with people who have vanity. You know what? It's a little bit of karma. People who go and present simply because out of vanity will fail because people see through people like that. People are not stupid. Somebody is very vain and all their interest is in me, moi, and myself, und ich. People will see through that. What is your take on animations? Very good, but they take a lot of time to develop. Yes, gosh, I'm having things in the chat box, and I'm talking, and also in the questions box. Tips on how to skip slides gracefully, please. Well, if you really need to, just go. Said, um, we haven't got time to deal with this, or in the interest of time, or I think we've already covered this. If you're going to skip a slide, it's for a reason. Just give them the reason. Be frank. What suggestion you have to combat presentation nerve? Practice, practice, practice. If I make a mistake, it becomes difficult for me to stay confident after that. No, we all make mistakes. Simply apologize and crack on. I mean, what mistake can you make? Unless you say to someone, I don't know, I'm Superman or whatever, or something that is clearly not true. Make a joke out of it and move on. Is there a right layout of seating in the presentation in the room? No, there isn't. And that probably will not be up to you anyway. Any tips on how to manage public speaking fear? I think we sort of covered that. Aside from what you have mentioned earlier about improving body language online presentation, what are the other tips you can give? Okay, I think I've given you a few. Can we have a recording after the presentation? I assume you're right. I think Eleanor said yes. When you were saying that it's way more important how you say things rather than what you say, couldn't that mindset lead to sophism? No, why? No. The way that you say things, there is something that is called congruence. I mean, we don't have time to go into all this, but something that is called congruence. If your body language says one thing and your verbal language says something different, people will pick up immediately. That's why, sort of when your other half says, you ask them what's wrong, and they said nothing. Okay, there's incongruence. Body language is saying one thing, verbal language is saying something different, and that's where the dichotomy, sort of is. Tips on Pechakucha type of presentation. Pechakucha is excellent. It's 20 slides in 20 seconds. It's very good practice. Again, we haven't got time to go to that, but Google Pechakucha, which is there. It's a brilliant. I did done quite a bit of Pechakucha. It's very, very good to practice your timing. Simon Sinek's way of presenting, why first, then the what? Yes, he's got his formulaic way of presenting, but it works. He is indeed a very, very good presenter. In the better presentation, how you deal with an uninterested or challenging audience. Look, audiences, audiences are there for two reasons. One, because they're forced to go there, a captive audience, like we're all forced to go and listen to the speech of the CEO, which is probably totally uninteresting, but we've got to pretend to be interested and be jolly and deferent and, your promotion's on the line or your bonus or whatever. The other thing is when people are there because they really want to hear you, okay? Now, if people are there because they want to listen to you, there's no reason why they should be uninterested, unless, of course, they expected one thing and you gave them something else. Okay, I came to listen to a lecture on how to deal with, you know, ineffective salespeople, and you start suddenly talking about, you know, sort of different types of flowers. Well, that's a different thing, but they're in an interesting because it's the wrong thing. Challenging audience. I love challenging audience. I love people to challenge me. I think challenging audiences can be very good. Make it, turn that into your advantage. What kind of slides can you use for children? Do you want videos? To be honest, interesting. I've never presented to. I don't recall having presented to kids. Um, but kids nowadays would probably expect very, very high videos because they live in such a technical digital age anyway. I can't answer that question because videos are probably, you know, sort of probably good. Um, Using memes as aids became normal. How to harness them and what to avoid distraction. Just use one or two. Use them sparingly. I'm just going to answer some of the questions because there's so many. Stage fright, we stay. How do you use body language the best way? There are lots of courses on body language. Do some research. How long should a presentation be? Interesting question. Well, normally they give you time. If somebody tells you, okay, you have half an hour to present, you prepare 25 minutes, which is what I did. If you had time my presentation, I was bang on 25 minutes, and then we move on to Q&A. How are we doing for time? No, we're doing okay. Interestingly, TED Talks have a maximum of 18 minutes. And they say that 20 minutes is about the maximum that people can, the amount of cognitive load that people can manage. Sometimes presentations lengths are going to be given to you by, you know, clients. But again, let us not mistake a presentation to a client on a sales pitch, okay, or a new product, but try to keep it, you know, sort of short. And presentations, again, internal presentations. I have seen CEOs who love the sound of their own voices speak until most of us had lost the will to live. Can you deliver a presentation without PowerPoint? Yeah, absolutely. I can deliver a presentation about, you know, without PowerPoint. If you know your stuff. The problem is, people tend to use a PowerPoint because they don't know what's coming afterwards. Some tips to a presentation. Some tips to enhance a presentation. Presenting a client, in introducing a client. Can't think of any. You know. You know. All you have to is, you know, what I say. The three B's. Be brief. The four B's rather. Be brief. Be courteous. Be kind. And be off. Not to use another word. Whether bullet points are important, I think we covered bullet points. Okay, how would one show passion during a presentation? One is expected to present a lot of information with a small time frame. Well, it's not the information that you're passionate about, it's what the information is about that you're passionate about. I can come and talk to you about the latest learning management system and tell you about, you know, sort of the concurrence rate and the bandwidth and all that. But if I'm passionate about what you do, the passion comes through. Right, let me go to the text chat. Oh my Lord. We've got another, Eleanor, we've got about another 5 minutes or so. Oh my
We
Lord.
have time for one more question.
Time for one more question. Okay, what am I going to choose? There are 50 billion ones here. Okay. How do you correct yourself on a wrong info you said from a previous slide or slide presentation? First rule of holes, guys. When you're in one, stop digging. I made many faux pas. The other day I was making a presentation. We were talking about the prices of oil, and I said, well, you know, how about nowadays where, you know, the price of oil has gone from $60 a barrel to $38 a barrel. You know, actually, one of my students actually it's gone down to 25. I said, yes, you're absolutely right. I said, that shows that I spent about a week without getting updated information. You know, guys, we're not perfect. The only thing you have to do is be honest. Raise your hand and say, physically, if you know what I mean, and say, sorry guys, I messed it up. I made a mistake. You're right. Thank you very much. What would I do without you? If you think that you're going to go out there pretending to know the answers to all the questions, no. Learning for me is a journey, is a sharing journey. I always tell my students, I don't teach you anything. I share some knowledge that I have accumulated over the years, but I would like to learn a lot from you. You guys are the younger generation, and you know, sort of, they also have the knowledge, their experiences. So I view this as a mutual learning journey. And if you mess it up, just put your hand up and say, sorry, what a stupid answer I've just given you. That doesn't make any sense to anyone. Just, be honest and open, and people will appreciate you a lot more and will give you a lot more credence than if you're trying to cover up some nonsense you said by trying to pretend that you didn't do something. No, what I meant was, no, you messed it up. Just put your hand up and admit it. End of story. No big deal. Good. Eleanor, I will hand over to you then on that note. And thank you all for all your questions. Wonderful. Unfortunately, we haven't got time to answer everything. We only have limited time. Eleanor, over to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, Robert. We will definitely put into practice what we have learned from you today. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. So to everyone, if you feel that this was useful to you, we have a number of other webinars coming up, the next being on Tuesday, April 28th with Professor Carrie Guittard. And if you would like to get more information on our programs, we are now hosting program-specific meetings for MBA and master's programs, as well as bachelor's program, where you can hear from our enrollment advisors and ask any questions that you may have. So I am now going to share the links in the chat box, starting first with MBA. Okay, so this is for MBA. If the URL doesn't come out as a if the URL comes out as a text, you can copy and paste in your browser. Perhaps we can guys, maybe don't write first on the chat box so that people can click on the link. I'll send again the one for MBA. And okay. And then next would be for the master's programs. This is for international business, finance, marketing, business analytics. So I'll give time for the others to click on the link first. And then finally, this is for the bachelor's program. Okay, so that's all from us today. Thank you very much for your presentation, Robert. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We hope to see you again soon. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye. Have a great day.